Hi everyone, my name is Caylie Sims. Thank you for watching my presentation. I am a senior graduating in May with a degree in environmental science and a GIS certification. GIS stands for Geographical Information Systems, and this is my GIS capstone. For this capstone, I am examining redlining, tree canopy, and temperature variation, all of which I will define and examine throughout this presentation. So let's get started. For this presentation, I'll have a quick introduction, my methodology, the results, and a discussion and conclusion as well. So for the introduction, there's three things that you need to understand. The first thing is that there is this problem of extreme heat, as it has caused the most fatalities over the past few decades. And it disproportionately affects communities of limited resources and communities of color. So extreme heat causes death, and it can also lead to worsening of certain diseases such as diabetes or diseases relating to different systems within the body, such as the nervous system, cardiovascular system, and can lead to increased cases of heat stroke and other things related to that. Moving on from extreme heat to urban heat islands. Urban heat islands are a phenomenon where extreme heat is amplified within urban areas. This occurs because there is an imbalance of manufactured surfaces such as concrete or pavement to natural landscapes such as parks or green spaces in general. The third thing you need to understand is the concept of redlining, which began in the 1930s. So the Homeowners Loan Corporation, known as the HOLC, began to grade neighborhoods based on their ability to get a mortgage, how easy it was for these neighborhoods to get mortgages. And this was based on a couple of different factors, such as the quality of the buildings, what was located around or in the neighborhood, so proximity to schools, businesses, and if they had sewer systems or water systems. But a big component of it was the makeup of the residents in terms of race and ethnicity. So let me define redlining really quickly. Redlining is a term to refer to this event of grading neighborhoods, but more specifically, it refers to degraded neighborhoods, and these are the worst neighborhoods. So when they were graded, neighborhoods were either given a grade of A, which is the best, B, C, or D, which is the worst, and they were color-coded on a map. Degraded neighborhoods were given the color red, so they were given a red line around them, which is where the term redlining comes from. So when I refer to a redlined neighborhood, I'm talking about degraded neighborhoods, and non-redlined neighborhoods are A, B, or C neighborhoods. All of these pieces of information, so extreme heat, urban heat islands, and redlining, all to come together in this paper by Jeremy Hoffman and several other authors. It's known as the effects of historical housing policies on resident exposure to intra-urban heat, a study of 108 US urban areas. So redline neighborhoods have a higher land surface temperature, known as LST, compared to their non-redline counterparts. Within this study, they examined 4 regions: the Northwest, Midwest, South, and West. They found within the southern and western cities, there's a greater difference in LST between A-graded neighborhoods and D-graded neighborhoods. However, Midwest cities showed the least difference. So this capstone kind of expands on the findings concerning the 4 regions, so explores the temperature variation between these 4 regions. 2 cities from each of the 4 regions were examined in the context of tree cover. So one city with the highest LST difference between A and D neighborhoods, and the other city had the lowest temperature difference between A and D neighborhoods. Tree cover and other forms of green space typically lower temperature, so we'll find that in most instances, higher tree cover is located in A-ranked neighborhoods compared to other graded neighborhoods. So examining tree cover will shed some light onto whether the scale of temperature differences between regions are due to tree cover or an alternative reason such as policy. So for this project, I pulled data from 2 different sources and uploaded them into ArcGIS, which I was then able to work with. So the first map or data I pulled from is known as Mapping Inequality. It's a website produced by the University of Richmond in which they contain shapefiles for many different cities across the United States. So shapefiles are these little maps, and for each city, you have the entire city as a whole and the different neighborhoods and their HOLC grade. So I pulled each city from the Mapping Inequality website. The other piece of data I used is pulled from the USA National Land Cover Dataset from the tree canopy cover dataset in particular. So this is a raster composed of cells, and each cell has a specific category applied to it, which is the percentage of tree cover within that cell. So these are all the cities I looked at. You can see on the left, there's the region. In the middle, there's the city and the state, and the temperature difference it has. So Portland, Oregon has a high temperature difference, and then Seattle has a low temperature difference within the region. But as I mentioned before, West and South have the highest temperature difference in average compared to the other 2. And Midwest has the least compared to the other 3. So for my methodology, I first had to decide what categories of tree cover I looked at. So there are 5 categories in total, but I didn't want to examine all of them. So I chose to look at the 2 categories of the highest percentages of tree canopy cover. For almost all of the cities, this category was greater than 75%, but one city only had the category of 50 to 75% and not the greater than 75%. So with this information in mind, I had to geoprocess all of the information in order to produce a table with the area of tree cover within each neighborhood. So each city was inputted into the first input, and then the HOLC grade field was inputted into the zone field. The third was the raster, the tree canopy cover raster, and the category was the canopy cover percentage category. And the processing size was left at the default. So after running that tool for each of the 8 cities, it output 8 separate tables, which contained the area of canopy cover in meters for each of the cities within each neighborhood in ArcGIS. So I exported this to Excel using the Table to Excel tool. I did this just because it was easier for me to look at and analyze by color coding everything. And I was also able to calculate the mean area of category of the canopy cover within each grade for the city. So you can see on the left is the raw data, what ArcGIS output, and on the right is a table with all of the means of the area of canopy cover. From this information, a new field was created in each of the cities' attribute table known as TCAVR. This stands for tree canopy cover average, and the values were added to each grade to map out the results. So for the results, this is the table in its entirety, and what I really want to look at is the D minus A values. So this is the difference in tree canopy coverage between D neighborhoods and A neighborhoods. There's 2 ways to look at these values. First, whether it's positive or negative, and the intensity or how big the number is. So positive values within this field mean that there's a higher mean area of dense tree canopy cover in D neighborhoods, while negative values indicate that it's a higher mean area of dense tree canopy cover in A neighborhoods. So if you look left to right, there's a pattern of negative, positive, and the temperature difference of the cities within a region is high, low, high, low. So we see that pattern. So positive A minus D values and low temperature differences are correlated with one another. Additionally, we can see that the greater areas, like the regions with the greatest LST difference compared to the other regions, they have higher and bigger numbers. So there's more of a difference between the dense tree canopy cover in A and D neighborhoods. You can see that there's minimal tree coverage in D compared to A in Joliet, Illinois, which is the lowest city within the Midwest, but that's also the Midwest as a region has the least amount of difference in LST compared to the other regions. So there is a higher amount of tree coverage within D neighborhoods versus A neighborhoods in cities with low temperature difference. Within the regions, they have different sorts of differences, and the bigger the number is in difference, the greater the temperature variation is. So minimal difference in tree coverage leads to a lower difference in LST comparing neighborhoods throughout all of the regions. So this occurs in all of the neighborhoods, and it's beneficial to understand because we do have this issue of varying temperatures between cities within one region. So this means that separate communities, such as resource-limited communities and communities of color, are dealing with more heat, leading to more health effects and possibly death. So we also see that trees are assisting in alleviating heat disparities. So this leads to the conclusion that trees are possibly a solution to the issue of urban heat islands and heat disparities. So with this idea, tree covers can be implemented into these neighborhoods with higher temperatures. And there are pros and cons to adding tree coverage. So trees can really transform a neighborhood. So they cool down neighborhoods, which then reduces the cost of electricity bills and also reduces risk of death and health issues. It benefits physical health as it helps filter air pollution, and it also benefits mental health as it reduces the stress levels of nearby residents. However, the one con is that when you add in tree cover, there's a possibility of gentrification being accelerated, which then leads to long-term residents being displaced. So I know that was a lot of information I just threw at you, and there's actually more information that I could have shared, but this is a very dense topic. So I've created two separate products which allows you to explore this more on your own. You can just scan the QR code. But within ArcGIS, there's ArcGIS Online, which allows you to produce separate things, which allows users to interact with them separately. So I made a story map and a web app, and I'll go over those real quick. The story map is really more details. It's something you can take at your own pace. So there's all these different sections and readings, more explanations, basically the same presentation I have here, but it's more detailed. You can actually see the maps I created and everything. And it includes citations, which you can then examine yourself. Now, if we look at the web app, this one's more interactive, but it still holds a lot of detail. Doesn't look like much right now, but if you click on one of these bookmarks, you can zoom in automatically to any of the cities that I analyzed. Now, within each of these cities, you have the different neighborhoods, but if you click on one, you get a pop-up, which actually shows the original description of why the HOLC graded it the specific way. So you can read that there's trends of growth in this area. It's underdeveloped on the west and has no city sewer systems or water. And you can do this for all neighborhoods within all cities. So if you would like more information, I highly recommend that you check those out. So these are all my sources. Again, thank you so much for watching my presentation. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day.